Ciao, guys. Welcome back to the Artful Podcast. It's Matteo, your host. And before we go on with the new episode, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, support the channel like that. It's really important. And no further ado, let's go on with the show. Perfect.
Awesome.
How are you guys today?
Oh my gosh, nice to meet you.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
pretty good. It's in
Finally, we
it's a
actually
chilly
meet in person.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. We've
Totally.
been trying to
Yeah.
do this for a couple of weeks now.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All good, I think, right now. It's a
Yes.
good little pocket of time. I think it's pretty relaxed after the holidays. People are getting back to work and everything. So
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
kind of feeling like going back to a normal kind of life after the whole pandemic, and now it's getting like normal again. But
Yeah.
so guys, in this new episode of the Artful Podcast, we are joined by Mila and Sebastian. And it's interesting. This episode is a bit different from usually because I usually interview artists and painters and drawings, and we talk about that side of art. But today we're gonna touch on music, and especially because I want to talk to you guys. I want to talk about the process of you owning, like you have your own podcast. And as a new podcast myself, it's been a couple of years now that I'm doing this, but still feeling like a new podcast. I wanna talk about the process and why did you start a podcast and the whole story behind. So if you wanna just give in a little bit of your background, and then we go from there.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of tied in together with the reason we decided to start the podcast. I'd been thinking about it for a while before I went to Mila with it. And we're both music production students studying here in Berlin, and we're kind of in a situation where we knew a lot of people, a lot of artists, including ourselves, that needed some sort of platform to promote their art on. And we had sort of the know-how and the access to equipment to do a podcast with very little budget, and provide that for people. So we just kind of took the first step and started to do it. And then now we're, I don't know, 3-4 months in, and getting a new person on weekly to talk about whatever they're trying to promote, whether it's shows here in Berlin or new live shows online or new single drops, album drops, whatever it is, just trying to get the voice out there.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's been really cool. Like I think also the special part of our podcast is usually our episodes are aligned with a specific event or a specific release by that artist. So it's really giving them a platform to promote that new project. And yeah, it's been really fun. And Sebastian's idea was so solid in the beginning, so it was really easy to jump on it and to kind of seize the opportunity.
So obviously, you said you're still studying music. Yeah. So it's that's why you decide to go for a music more in like for interviewing these art like music artists. So it's what your interest is basically.
Yeah, I don't think we're necessarily restricted to that. The second episode we did, we had a couple of guys that were doing an events management company called Moonrock Events on. So it's not totally restricted to that, but that's definitely at the forefront of what we're thinking about, just because it's more in our day-to-day lives.
You know? So what was the first time then you did your first episode, and how was the whole process, the feeling that you had? Because sometimes we always like, especially now, people consume podcasts like daily, and it's become such a normal thing. But yeah, you never really see the other side of like the people that do the podcast, and it's always like interview, and it's always the other person. So how was your feeling of the excitement that you had the first episodes going to doing this project?
Yeah, I mean, well, like you said, like we consume so much media every day where people are talking in YouTube videos or on TikToks, but I think it's actually really hard to be on camera and kind of develop the
Yeah.
skills that you need to speak clearly and put together your thoughts. So I think the first few episodes were a bit interesting because, I mean, I know personally I was not as good at organizing my thoughts and a little bit kind of shy, not camera shy, but it was just kind of a foreign thing to me. And so, yeah, I think that was the hardest part, but it's been really great to get the skills of just being on camera and getting comfortable in that space. But yeah, the first 2 episodes were definitely interesting. And of course, dealing with the technical difficulties, as you know, that was also a struggle, but I think it was really worth it. It was like a natural lesson on, camera, being in front of the camera, which is really cool.
I was definitely focusing on the technical aspect for the first couple episodes because you're like trying to get all the cameras right and trying to get all the mics going and everything and making sure everyone's speaking properly to them. And kind of in the first couple episodes didn't even go into it thinking about all of the skills behind interviewing, of trying to guide a conversation and trying to figure out how to express yourself clearly, but also make it, because we do some editing just to cut down some areas, trying to make that more possible for Anton, who edits the episodes, in the way that you say a question where maybe obviously you want to relate back to the previous question, but you maybe leave in a break so there's an edit point so you can take a clip out for social media and stuff like that I just never thought about before.
Yeah, it's really about the art of conversation, like Sebastian said. That was a huge part of being able to be in control of a conversation and guide people through. Yeah, was just a huge skill to learn. So
yeah, it's a challenging as well, keeping the attention of the listening. That's one of my main focus. It's try to make the chat, the interview, fun, first of all, especially because when we talk about art, it's always, in my case, it can be a lot of like, it can be a little bit heavy sometimes, so, and quote unquote boring could be, so it's always try to keep it like a little bit light, a little bit fun. But the attention span that we have now, it's really limited, and for people keeping attention for like 40 minutes, an hour, it could be challenging. But so that's one of my points, like I have to try to keep the attention. But I listened to a couple episodes. I saw a lot of your clips that you have on Instagram. You're doing a great job as an interviewer. It's really like it's really interesting. It's really fun. It's these young people talking to each other and talking about music and talking about their process, their creativity process. It's really nice, and it's really easy to listen to. So well done to that. You're doing a great job. I really enjoyed the clips that you put out there. So going a little bit on your personal process of like, why did you choose to start producing music and studying music in general? Like, it's always been your passion and you want to make a career out of it?
Yeah, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm actually from California, so it was kind of a bigger jump, but this was going to the school we're currently studying at, was my college substitute to maybe some American colleges, and it was definitely more financially available to me, and more focusing on just production, because that was what I wanted to do. I was originally a songwriter and an artist, but I really wanted to learn all of the technical side so I could have control over my own mixes and my own on my own music as much as I could. So yeah, it was kind of just a decision to move here and pursue an alternative college situation to a lot of my friends in the States. And but I had gotten into production a few years before I moved to Berlin, because I just really wanted to make the music that I heard in my head. I had these really full productions as a songwriter, and I wanted to be able to execute them. And yeah, so that was kind of the thought behind moving
how long
here
ago
and
you
pursuing.
how long you been here?
I moved here in September of 2021.
Okay.
So it's been, I think, like, what is that, like a year and a half, kind of? Yeah. And I love the city. I think it's a really rich space and just really with a lot of culture. So yeah, it fits the podcast really well, and it definitely fit what I wanted to do really well. So yeah.
Yeah, and then for me, I'd grown up playing a lot of instruments, and playing in orchestras and sort of jazz bands and similar stuff to that. And then I moved to Germany. I moved to Baden-Württemberg for the last 2 years of my high school years. And at that point, I decided to take the safe route of going to electrical engineering, computer science. So that was all my focus for the first couple of years I was living here, 2018 to 2020. And then COVID hit, and my German exam, I needed C1 to go to uni here to study that. And my exam was cancelled. So I missed all the application deadlines for that year. And in lockdown, I was working part-time, and then every hour that I wasn't working, I just was spending making music on my laptop because it was what I wanted to do when I had nothing to do. And then at some point, sort of late 2020, I was thinking, like, why am I not at least trying to do this? So that was when I made the decision. And then since then, it's kind of all in. And at that same time is when I moved to Berlin. So it was peak COVID. And yeah, so basically my whole time in Berlin has been music oriented, apart from part-time jobs to get some income.
That's for me, it's because you seem pretty young, both of you, and for me it's so like crazy the fact that at this young age now you can literally decide to start a podcast and investing in your career in artistic fields, and it's more available, and it's more an easier path, even if that has challenges, and obviously it's never going to be that easy to succeed in this kind of fields. But thinking about, if you don't mind, how old are you?
I'm 20.
I'm 19.
Oh, so. If I think if I think what I was doing at 19, I'm like, I was doing completely other things, and I literally moved to Berlin because decision of like I'm gonna go 100% into art, and I was living in England for a long time. I did my study there. I was working crazy, in other fields, but I was doing art, but it was always like on the side, and I knew that's what I wanted to do, but I never had the gut and the chance to do it. And then one day during the pandemic, I was bored, and I wanted to get into more curating exhibitions. Which I started doing just before the pandemic, but then because of the pandemic, everything's closed, so I couldn't do any more project. So I contacted one of the curators that I knew that's pretty successful, and he lives in Berlin. He goes all over the place, Spain, France, to do exhibitions. But I was like, can I help you in any way? And I was thinking more like online reading, writing for him, something like that, just to get practice. But it was like, well, if you want to come to Berlin, there is a gallery that you can offer you a place, and then you can start from there, and then whatever happens. And I was like, great. And I moved after 2 months. So I pick up my stuff and I come to Berlin. And the city gives a lot of like how can I say, hope. It feels like you can do it. And in England, it was a little bit challenging because it felt a little bit snobbier. I don't want to, be too critical, but it felt a little bit like it was an exclusive thing. And as an independent artist, it's always, you feel like, okay, I'm trying many times to be part of a competition or something, and I don't get it. And there is always that feeling, okay, it's not gonna happen for me because I might don't know the right people and all that connecting with the right person. So, but once I moved here, I felt a little bit better that as an independent artist to be like, okay, I can do my thing here, and I can maybe succeed one day, to to do my art, and that would be my career. So Berlin has, as you said, it does give you that feeling of, yeah, it's a good place to be for starting your art career. Did you because your podcast, it's a lot of it's focused on independent artists.
Yep.
So young artists, they want to do their things, and they want to succeed. So why did you, if it was a choice, or it just comes to you, why was the independent artist, give a platform to this independent artist important for you?
Yeah, there's a really big shift, I think, happening right now in the music industry, sort of worldwide. Partially like what you're saying, where it's so much easier now with 19 and 20 to be able to start a podcast because it's relatively cheap. If you have a laptop, you can make music. Obviously there's a scale to that, but
Yeah.
it's a much lower barrier to starting now. So there's a lot more musicians at that level, and then you can really, really get great with just doing that, and you don't need a label. And there's artists like The Weeknd, his producer works largely on a laptop and just with whatever mic is around. They're not using studio spaces like that. Studios are obviously still relevant for bands if they're trying to do live things. But for a lot of artists, especially in hip hop and EDM, not as relevant anymore. So you don't need the monetary backing from labels like you used to. And with social media, that reduces a lot of the marketing budget that was forever a really massive problem for artists, down to almost zero if you're really good at it. And I think the place labels have in the industry is dying a little bit, and it's easier than ever to become self-sustaining as an independent artist. And we just really wanted to focus on that and try to grow that in Berlin as a possibility. Hopefully people can see the podcast who are interested in doing music that were otherwise afraid because they were thinking, oh, well, to get to a label, I've got to send, like, statistically probably 5 emails a day for 3 years to get a deal that's carried through to completion. That seems impossible, and almost is. And I think hopefully showing people that it's an option to do it your own. It's a lot of work, still really hard, but it is an option now, and it's definitely more possible than it's been before. So showing that to people was a large part of the idea behind that, on my end at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was very well
Oh,
said.
Go ahead.
As usual.
Oh,
Hi,
okay.
Sebastian. But yeah, that was basically it.
You said that labels, you said labels are like dying, in a sense that people are more able to do more independent stuff, and they can succeed in their own niche, and which is true. I really think it's true. There is a lot of similarity between artist as a painter drawing and to musician, and because you go to gigs, you do your own things, and artists the same. They paint, they do little exhibition till they get bigger exhibition, till they get bigger stuff, and they grow. So I see a lot of similarity that, but I always there are some cases where you see artists as they, with social media, and they use the social media to create their platform and to sell and to be successful. But do you think, because my on my end I see that, but to get how can I explain, to get to be a serious musician or a serious artist, you gotta have a label or a gallery behind you, that's one of the major gallery or one of the major labels. Do you feel like, as a younger producer that's more into the younger point of view, do you think it's still relevant that to be a serious artist you need to get a label behind you, or do you think that's completely like it's gonna go forever, like it's gonna be the past?
I don't think it'll be part of the past, because I think there's a really big difference in what galleries and curators behind galleries do for visual art compared to what labels do for music. And for visual art, as I understand it, I might be wrong, there's a lot of emphasis put on the sort of status of the gallery curator, where it's really valuable what they think of your art. And then they'll show X number of exhibits in a year, and then that's really important for the people who have been allowed to show their art in their gallery. That's like something where you can look at an artist and say, oh, they've been in these galleries. That means that they're doing really well. That means they have art that is making a difference or means something to a lot of people. And for labels, it's much more of a business transaction. There are a lot of smaller labels that really focus on curation, but a large part of what labels do is not uplift artists that are having a unique voice, that are interesting, but monetize the art that is created by people that they think is going to give a big return.
I see.
So I think the focus has shifted a little bit. And for labels, it's something like, I think 3% of artists that sign with a label get followed through on their deal. So it's much more of like okay, we'll purchase your art and in return give you a budget to work on the next thing that we'll get a part of as well. Or variants. There's a lot of variants on deals, but I think that's the big difference between visual arts, with the curator side of things being really, really important. And I think that would be great if we can bring that more into music. But I think the industry behind music works a little differently, and I think that's where labels have lost somewhat the power that they once had, because it used to be a creating thing where you would maybe follow a label that like Motown is a genre, which is incredible. We don't have any labels like that now that I know of. I might be wrong, but yeah, I think it's because it's so much more based on the money behind what it could return. It gives less of a voice to artists that are doing something that might not be financially as viable, but is creatively interesting or valuable.
Yeah,
sure. True. Do you think it's been kind of like the musical industry is kind of been exposed, especially lately, because there are so many even podcasts, there are so many social media like that talk about what's behind, and there are even more artists talking about what's behind the scene and why certain things happen, and people are more aware of maybe the more it's more like a business, and it's not more like supporting artists per se. Do you think that
yes
that
and
was
no?
a big...
I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. I'd say yes and no. The labels had a lot of value before the internet, especially, where you really needed your CDs or your vinyls or your tapes to be distributed. And practically, as an independent artist, that's really difficult. For marketing, you needed posters around, you needed TV ads and everything like that. Is very difficult to get without contacts, without the contracts that often labels have. But now that those things have been removed, where you don't need physical distribution, you don't need literally the resources to move your art to different places and move your name in terms of marketing to different places, that side of what they were offering is now gone. But in terms of it being uncovered, I don't know. For me, it's difficult to say, because I don't know what the image was really like before before the internet, because I wasn't around. I don't know if you...
Yeah. It's kind of weird being in this modern world of like post-internet. Being in the world is just so different now. But yeah, I definitely think that music has already been so democratized, as we mentioned earlier. Like, we can make music. Anybody can make music at this point and release it on Spotify. There's no separation between, making and releasing music now. It's like you don't need to knock on some big studio door and work there for months in order to be in a musical environment. You can just make it yourself at home. So yeah, I think that now there's just maybe more of a sense of like the group versus, you know, the big label. Like everybody's, you know, I think like social media gives everybody a platform. So why would I need some label platform now? There's kind of this sense of like there's like more of a sense of DIY than ever. And I think also, I don't know if you know, you probably know a lot about like Logic, the rapper back.
No,
like he had a whole DIY kind of mentality on his own. I mean, he didn't use any labels at all.
The rapper is
Chance
similar.
the Rapper is also similar.
Yeah,
I might be wrong. I think Bad Bunny, who is the most successful most streamed artist, I think worldwide right now, I think might be independent. I was just watching an interview with Zane Lowe and Damon Albarn. They were talking about that.
Did he start
I haven't
independent?
checked it. I'm not sure. I don't know. I only literally heard it a couple hours ago. So
Yeah, you just think
but
probably now. Yeah, maybe now it's that's basically like it is what it is. So you can be independent. But yeah, there are so many even from before. There are so many artists that they didn't need a label. They were just so talented that they become something. Even Ed Sheeran, he started from just in the streets, and now it's the biggest artist in the world. But yeah, it's I don't know, in art it's a bit different. It's a bit difficult because you need the space to technically you need the space to exhibit. Like you need somewhere where to put your art. You can do it in the street, like you can bring your paintings and put them against the wall in the streets, but people are not gonna, they're not there because they want to see art. They're just gonna pass by. So in art, it's still like really relevant. The gallery, the major gallery, that figure of like, I need somebody else. Even if social media will give you a platform to show your art. To be honest, most of my commissions and where I make my money as an artist, it's through social media. People see my art and they like it and they contact me, they DM, and they want a painting. So I see, it's slightly different. And it's really interesting seeing those two fields be compared, because they might seem a little bit they seem like similar at the beginning, but there is a lot of like variants and different things to that change the whole industry and the whole thing behind. Where do you see your podcast in a few years? What's the goal with your podcast? And because that's why I want to interview, I want to promote in my little with my little platform, I want to promote the podcast. It's a really good podcast, and I want people to go follow. Where do you see your podcast how do you want to use your podcast?
Yeah, so I mean, in comparing industries, it's a good way to look at it in terms of where I want the podcast to go. I think in visual arts, the curator side of things is really, really amazing and gives a good way for artists that are lesser known to have a voice and show that there's value to their art, even if it's not financially successful yet. And I would love to see the podcast get to a place like that, where we're still talking exclusively to independent artists, really in Berlin, but being able to lift up voices for specific artists that are doing something, and hopefully through the podcast can get a platform where they can then make some money and not feel the need to go to a label or worse, stop doing music because they can't make a living out of it. So hopefully we can create a platform that provides that opportunity for people.
Yeah, it also has lately, and I think hopefully we'll be even more of this, but it's just been a great connection space for people. I mean, I'm finding collaborators musically from the podcast even, and I'm sure that hopefully there will be artists who will see our podcast and go, oh man, I really want to work with those people. Maybe they contact us, for their contact, or they reach out and say, hey, I saw you on the podcast. It's just creating this really cool pool of musicians and people that not only benefit us as artists, but just benefit everybody. And I think the more traction we get and the more we grow, that's just going to be heightened even more. So hopefully it can just be this really cool space where there's still profit, but people are, getting connections that they never would have had. So yeah.
Create a community. That's what I want to do with my podcast. It's to create a community of artists, and because I feel like sometimes the sense of community between artists, it can be lost because we are so focused in our practice and our single thinking about us, that if I help you, I'm gonna waste time, and I'm not gonna focus on my stuff. So one of the reasons why I did start a podcast is to create a community, to give a little voice to everybody. I don't want to have only big artists. I don't want to have big curators. I just people that interest me. I want to talk to them, and create the community, which is great. It's what you want to do as well. And I wish you the best, because when you meet young people like you guys, it's really inspiring. I love that energy. I love the fact that you don't think about only you. It's about the music. It's about the independent, the creativity, and it's a good place to start a podcast. It's a good place to be, and good luck with everything. I don't want to take too much time of your day. Thank you very much, Mila and Sebastian, to be part of the podcast, and go follow the Unsigned Berlin podcast. It's Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's on YouTube as well.
Everywhere.
It's
available everywhere.
All the platform. The links they're gonna be on the description, so just go click the link. And thank you very much, guys. It's been a great episode.
Thank you very much for having us on. We really appreciate it.
Amazing.
Lovely.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye. Ciao.
Ciao.